Hi everyone, my name is Julie and I speak about the spiritual awakening journey and the empath journey. And today I want to share my perspective and experiences and my wisdom about the dark night of the soul. So, either if you're going through this or you have gone through the dark night of the soul, this video is for you. If you are on a spiritual journey, you will most likely at one point or another go through this process and more than once. So, this video may resonate at a future point in time. When I'm talking about the dark night of the soul, I'm not pointing to a few bumps in the road, a bad day, or a few negative thoughts. I speak about the experience where you completely reach rock bottom and you feel like you're even scratching on the bottom itself. I'm speaking about the moment where you question existence itself and you feel like you're dying with like no escape. When the emotional pain is like it's not to stand anymore and your mind is so dark that you feel like you're just losing it. When you feel like you're suffering so bad and you're just collapsing, crumbling and crashing mentally, emotionally, this is what I'm talking about. The darkest of the darkest you experience and nothing less. And you feel like you can't avoid it and you definitely can't control it. So, this is what I want to talk about. And I think this is maybe the most important topic to share right now. I mean, love and light is the easy side of spirituality. And even though it's okay to want that and to focus on that, we also need to speak about the opposite so we can transform it into love and light. In my perspective, we are love and light. And the key is to take off the unconscious layers and experience love and light naturally instead of having to try to reach for it. So I'm here to talk about the darkness, the sorrow, the shame, the fear, the anger, the pointlessness, and the apathy, and the feeling of almost giving up on existence itself. What is actually happening when we are going through this? What is going on from a higher perspective, from your soul's perspective? And what is the purpose of the dark night of the soul? And before I share my perspective on that, I first of all just want to say that if you're going through this, you are a true hero of this world. A hero is, in my opinion, someone who faces the darkness, and that is what you're doing. You're standing up for Source and the whole universe as we're ultimately one consciousness. So you are bending down and digging into the shadows of the universe and the lost pieces of Source. You're not doing this only for yourself, you're doing it for the whole. And the fact that you have volunteered to do this for the universe makes you a hero, nothing less. So just take a moment to acknowledge your journey for yourself. I appreciate you, Source appreciates you, and the universe is endlessly grateful for your work, even if you can't see that you are being supported. So it wouldn't really be the dark night of the soul if you didn't feel like you were alone in it too, right? So we are one, and your healing is healing for me and for the universe, and that's very important to recognize. You are, from a higher perspective, transforming unconsciousness into consciousness when you're going through this. You are making the unseen seen. So the darkness, the pain, the suffering, it has been there all along. It is manifested from a past creation and experience. And what is happening during this process is that it's becoming visible to you. Consciousness is awareness, it's beingness itself, and the truth of what you really are. So unconsciousness is the idea about what you think you are. So when you have lost the truth of what you are in separation from source, you create a false identity, also called the ego. And this is how the universe is created. For source to have an experience of itself, it must have a contrast. And to experience a contrast when you are all that exists, source created illusion. And this is perfect and the way it is supposed to be from the creator's perspective. There's nothing wrong about this. But if you're going through the dark night of the soul, it probably means that you are returning home again. It probably means that you are being called home to remember who you are, which is ultimately its source itself. The process of realizing that what you are not, and realizing that you are not what you thought you were, it is painful for most of us. I like to use the bubble analogy. So imagine that you are inside a bubble, and the bubble is your idea about yourself. It's the idea about life, the universe. Yes, your whole perspective and understanding of reality all exists inside of the bubble. And the dark night of the soul is when the bubble bursts. It bursts, and your old reality and idea about yourself falls apart. So a part of you is dying, and you can feel it. And yes, a part of your ego is dying, but in reality, you are expanding. So you are now imagine that you're now in a new and bigger bubble. Unless you experience enlightenment right away, like a few individuals have. But most likely you are in a larger bubble and your perspective of reality has expanded. And I'm not talking about more thoughts and beliefs. I mean more like your consciousness is expanding. You have less false identity, more consciousness, and you are more of your true self, which is like being. So the bubble bursting is what I think of as the dark night of the soul. It is painful, but it leads to liberation. So the dark night of the soul is closely tied to spiritual awakening. We can speak about sound healing and yoga and crystals, and I respect that and I appreciate that and I do all of that. But the real and true work, in my perspective, is to dig down and picking up the missing parts of yourself. And awakening is becoming aware of what you are not and letting go of what you thought you were. Your awareness of everything, and including yourself, is increasing, and it will make you aware of the pain and the darkness that has been there all along. And when I say darkness, I mean what is in the shadows. I mean what is not being seen, what is not being acknowledged by consciousness. Becoming more conscious and rising higher can be seen as shining light on the darkness. How to make the shadows disappear? Well, you turn on the light. So your light is your consciousness, and the dark night of the soul is telling you that you are expanding and are ready for the next level of healing and further liberation. So you are literally turning on the light inside of you, and all your shadow aspects gets exposed. And the more light of your consciousness expands, the longer it reaches to parts of you that may have been unconscious for lifetimes. Unconsciousness is lack of awareness, and consciousness is awareness. So when you are unconscious, you create the idea of what you are, and you hold many of these ideas until you start to question them and awaken. And the ideas are more like, I think of like mental images of yourself and what you have told yourself to be. Further, I want to speak about aspect integration, which is closely tied to the dark night of the soul, where your inner aspects are begging to be seen. So when you are human, you are fragmented in nature, meaning that you have multiple parts of yourself inside of you, multiple ideas about who you are inside of you. In the same way, Source has multiple aspects of itself in the big picture, and the aspects are living inside of you, whether you have acknowledged them or not. When you experience trauma, a few things happen on a spiritual level. With trauma, I mean an experience with an interpretation that gets stuck in your body and pushed into your unconsciousness. The energy that you experience from the event is usually far away from source frequency. And since we humans have emotions, it feels painful. It feels painful emotionally in form of anger, shame, guilt, loneliness, meaninglessness, you name it. So this can be so painful in a moment when we experience the trauma that we, as a survival response, we move out of our body to not have to feel the pain. And that, I don't mean that we go out of our body physically, but our consciousness moves out of our body to not having to deal with the pain in that moment. So when we then don't acknowledge what we are feeling and we refuse to feel, we are actually rejecting a part of ourselves. And the energy, instead of flowing through you, it gets stuck inside of you, in your unconsciousness. So when you don't feel the emotion, which is actually just energy with a distorted frequency or a low frequency, the energy gets stored in your body and it needs to be felt and acknowledged later. So when our soul, higher self, decides it wants to become more aware, and we start to expand our consciousness, we go back into our body again and we regain contact with it. It is like you're stepping back into your body and turning on the light. So the aspects of you that you rejected in the past and that are now in the shadows, they become visible. The aspects of you that you rejected and that are unconsciously dictating your perspectives and thus life choices and everything in your life, the aspects are ready to be seen, they are ready to be loved, they are ready to be integrated and eventually transformed into consciousness. So that is how we heal, by loving what is not being loved, by loving what inside of you that is experiencing separateness and what is hiding from conscious awareness. Right now, humanity is going through a dark night of the soul. We are awakening as a species, and Earth is moving into its new dimension. I recommend that you check out the work of Dolores Cannon or lots of other spiritual teachers that speak on this topic if this is new to you. Source is calling us home after all these years of suffering, and so many of us are ready to remember who we are. And this is very special, and it will have ripple effects into the whole universe we're a part of. If you're going through the dark night of the soul right now, know that there is nothing wrong with you. In fact, I dare to say there is something very right about you, and you are where you are supposed to be. If not, you wouldn't be there. It is painful when a part of you dies and transform. So be kind with that part of you. The pain is in the past, it's from the past, and it has probably suffered for a long time. So be gentle with yourself. If you avoid it or try to move away, it will get stronger as you ascend spiritually. The light is shining on the dark, and you have no choice but to eventually see the darkness if you want to move into higher states of consciousness. If you're watching this, you're probably starting to remember, and you are starting to integrate the parts of you that are not remembering and believe in an illusion. And the parts of you believe in separation from yourself and others, and separation is the opposite of oneness. Oneness is love, and oneness is truth, and love is source frequency. So separation is therefore experienced as painful. And the more light you become, the more dark will the darkness be experienced, the more painful it will become because it becomes more in contrast to your light. Again, I'm using the analogy of light and dark, but it's all about consciousness and unconsciousness. Nothing is wrong, it is just experienced differently. Your fragments are becoming one with you, and that is the same process that happens collectively when we become one with Source again. So yeah, eventually you are turning into a masterpiece of wisdom. The dark night of the soul is the experience of breaking down completely and eventually breaking free. And the process can last from a few hours to a long period. It's very individual and it's perfect as it is. The key here is to surrender. It's to giving up, letting go. It might sound easy when I say it like that, but if you have experienced this, you know that it's not that easy. If it was easy to alchemize unconsciousness, we would have been done already, and humanity would shift to the fifth dimension in a second. And we probably could, but we have so much resistance to feeling our pain, right? And the sooner you meet the pain and surrender, the sooner the dark night will pass, and it will be replaced by peace, acceptance, and pure consciousness. So yeah, you are on your way home from separation to oneness. It is painful and it's a hero's journey. Love is our nature, and the challenge is, I believe, to love where love is absent. How far can we stretch love? Oneness, that's what I mean. And keep the knowing of it, like, especially when love feels impossible. When we are healing like this, we are letting love expand the furthest it has ever been so far in the universe. If this message resonates with you, feel free to give it a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel. I hope I've helped you somehow with my message. If you liked it and it resonates with you and you know someone that might need this information, just feel free to share it. we are in this together, even though it might not always feel like it. If you feel like you need further support through Dark Night of the Soul, I have created a Dark Night of the Soul toolkit, which is available on my webpage, and it's in the link down below. In the toolkit, I share my 8 most important techniques that I use to help me through this experience. And honestly, I use them more frequently than my Dark Night of the Soul experience. Yeah, I use them sometimes on a daily basis when I feel like emotional pain and a lot of thoughts. And yeah, I will gladly share them with you if it resonates with you. So thank you very much for watching my video, and namaste.